You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture with Dr. T. Michael W. Halcomb and Dr. Frederick J. Long. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Proof Text. I am Michael Halcomb, and in this episode I'm thinking about three things. The three things I want to share with you about are actually three tombs. So I was just in Italy and traveled all over the place. I started in the north of the country and then traveled pretty far south. The first place I landed was in near Venice, and it's a pretty cool little island. You travel all over by gondolas and vaporettos, these little like taxi boats. One of the things on the island of Venice is the tomb of St. Mark. It's inside a big church. In fact, Mark is the patron saint of Venice. So you'll see these Mark logos and flags, the little lions all over the place. But I want to show you a picture, if you're watching, of St. Mark's tomb, which is really cool. So let me share it here on the screen. And that way you know that if you're ever in Venice, hey, you need to go check this out. So here is the tomb of St. Mark in Venice. And this is just one side of it. And you can see that it says part of it, Marcus Filius Meus, my son Mark. So it's quoting a portion of the Petrine epistle there. But yeah, this is really neat. Really kind of a solemn and somber place. You do have to pay a few extra bucks once you get inside the church, which you have to pay to get into. But you have to pay a few extra bucks to get inside and see the tomb of St. Mark up close. Now, there's a lot of sort of mythology surrounding this, and it's not exactly clear to me or certain to me that this is, in fact, the bones or the DNA of St. Mark in this casket, but it could be. If you read up on some of the history of this, there was supposedly smuggling Mark's bones out of another country to get them to Italy and trading and this sort of thing. Really lots of mystery surrounding this. Nevertheless, they needed a place to venerate St. Mark, and so here it is. If you're ever in Venice, be sure you go and see this. The next tomb I saw was the tomb of St. Peter. And you can see this from several different vantage points within the Vatican. If you go into sort of the main portion of the Vatican, where most people go, just sort of the main level, the main floor, you can see this huge structure in the middle, and it has St. Mark's tomb. It's like a huge structure built over St. Mark's tomb. In fact, that's something common in all of these churches or sanctuaries. They build these big altar-like structures over the tombs of sacred people like St. Mark, and then St. Peter here, of course. And you can, if you're on the main floor, you can look down and sort of see a little bit of where the tomb's supposed to be, but really the tomb is in like a grotto deep underneath all the trappings they've built on top of it. And so you can go downstairs for free in one area, and you can walk past it and see a little sliver of the tomb. But then you can pay for an additional tour and walk back through underground tunnels and whatnot and get, I guess, a closer up look of St. Peter's tomb. And so what you're seeing here is just one vantage point of it. You expect to see way more people at the Vatican and looking at St. Peter's tomb than St. Mark's tomb in Venice, although there was a lot of people there. Or the third tomb, which was St. Paul's tomb. So here, by the way, I don't think I switched before to the tomb of St. Peter, but there it is. You can get a little bit of a look at it. And now let me switch to the tomb of St. Paul, which was really cool. This is also it's in Rome, kind of just on the outskirts and not far from the alleged place where Paul was beheaded, which I also visited and may talk about in a future episode. And so what you can see here is you can see some of the underground of the tomb, and then you can see a little bit of inscription on the tomb. You can walk down to this. And a lot of what they do in this sanctuary or this church building is like every 5 to 10 minutes they have a mass going, and it's kind of cool to watch that. They'll come through like marching through the sanctuary and singing a song. They'll go down around the tomb here and then give a little homily and do a prayer, and then they're off. And then a few minutes later, the next group comes on. One of the really cool things about the tomb of St. Paul as well is that just behind here, where all the big trappings, this big altar are, is a little chapel dedicated to St. Stephen. And if you know the scriptural story, right, Paul was holding the coats for all those who were stoning Stephen when before he eventually died. And so, these are 3 tombs. Really cool seeing the tombs of St. Mark, St. Peter, and St. Paul. I saw other tombs as well, and again, maybe I'll talk about those in future episodes. But if you're ever in Italy, don't forget that there's lots of scripture-related stuff going on in Italy, all the way from Venice on down south to Naples, and even beyond that, more south than that. But you get like Puteoli Bay, where one of the places Paul landed when he came into Italy. That's right around Naples, Bay of Naples. And you have these tombs, and even in Rome, one of the supposed sites is the head of John the Baptist. I wasn't able to make it to that one, but there are about 10, 15 different sites that claim that throughout the world. So we're not quite sure. And there's, even with the tombs of Peter and Paul, there's maybe a little bit more surety and research to suggest that these are their tombs as opposed to like Mark's, but still there's a lot of mythology and storytelling that's grown up around all these tombs. Nevertheless, it's still interesting. It's still cool to visit these places, and it's still enlightening. And I would highly suggest, if you're ever in Italy, make this part of your trip, right, to stop and see these things. And I'll talk more about some stuff I saw in Italy related to scripture in upcoming episodes. But yeah, those are 3 things that I'm thinking about, and I hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.